We have been told a story about sugar, a story of villains, addiction, and willpower. But what if the lie isn't just about the chemistry of glucose, but about our own hunger? We treat sugar like an enemy we must conquer, a temptation we must starve. But rarely do we stop to ask, what is this sweetness really replacing in your life? We live in a culture that confuses physical nourishment with emotional soothing. When you reach for that sugar, you are often looking for a moment of comfort, a brief respite from the exhaustion of being human. We blame the substance, but we ignore the hunger that has nothing to do with the stomach. Today, we are going to peel back the science, yes, the facts, but we are also going to look at the hidden architecture of your desires. We are going to explore why we are so terrified of our cravings, and why the biggest lie about sugar is actually the belief that you are simply weak. Let's unmask the myth, not just with data, but with the curiosity your body deserves. Let's start with the most dangerous lie of all, the one that has been sold to you in glossy packaging, television commercials, and even in the misguided advice of your own well-meaning doctors. The lie is this: a calorie is a calorie. We are told that weight gain, metabolic disease, and your inability to stop reaching for that afternoon snack are all simply a matter of character. We are told it is a simple equation of energy in versus energy out, and if your pants are getting tighter, it is because you, personally, have failed at the game of willpower. But let me be absolutely clear, this is not a failure of character. It is a failure of chemistry. When you look at the evidence, the argument for willpower completely falls apart. You see, the food industry knows something you might not yet have grasped. They have spent billions of dollars engineering their products to bypass your brain's natural satiety signals. They aren't just selling you food, they are selling you a biological hack. When you consume the type of processed high-fructose corn syrup that saturates our modern food supply, you aren't just eating a treat. You are overloading your liver's capacity to process it. Think of it like this: your liver has a limit. When you ingest sugar in its natural form, wrapped in its fiber matrix, the way nature intended, your liver can handle it. But when you strip away that fiber and hyper-concentrate the sugar, you are essentially force-feeding your liver. It gets overwhelmed, and that excess is converted into fat right there in the organ where it does the most damage. This leads to insulin resistance, which, and please listen closely, is the primary driver of obesity, not the other way around. We have been conditioned to believe that if we just had more discipline, we could outrun a bad diet. We think that if we went to the gym for an extra 30 minutes, we could balance the books. But the math doesn't work that way, because the hormones controlling your hunger are not listening to your willpower. They are listening to your insulin levels. When your insulin is chronically high because of the processed junk you've been consuming, your brain is being told that you are starving, even when you have massive energy stores sitting around your midsection. Your brain is essentially being starved of energy because that energy is locked away in fat cells, inaccessible to you, thanks to the hormonal signals triggered by sugar. So, when you find yourself standing in front of the pantry at 10 p.m., desperate for that one last cookie, you are not weak. You are not addicted in the way we usually talk about moral failings. You are a biological system responding to a metabolic environment that has been engineered to make you sick. The industry wants you to believe this is your fault, because as long as you think you're the problem, you'll never look at the chemistry that is the actual cause. They want you focused on your lack of discipline, so you won't notice that the game is rigged against your metabolism from the very first bite. We have to stop blaming the victim for a metabolic disaster that was manufactured in a boardroom. True health begins the moment you stop punishing yourself for a biological process you never stood a chance of winning through willpower alone. Now, if it isn't a matter of willpower, then what is actually happening when that sugar hits your system? We have been trapped in this exhausting reductionist loop where we treat all calories as identical, as if the human body were just a simple furnace burning wood. But your metabolism isn't a furnace. It is a complex biochemical laboratory, and in that laboratory, the fuel you provide determines whether you are running a clean engine or clogging the pipes. We need to confront the dangerous misunderstanding that glucose and fructose are the same thing. They are both sugars, yes, but they are handled by your body in fundamentally different ways. Glucose, the kind of sugar your blood needs for basic energy, can be used by every single cell in your body. It is the universal currency of life. If you have extra glucose, your pancreas releases insulin, your muscles soak it up, and you move on with your day. That is a system working exactly as intended. But then, we have fructose. This is the sweet component of table sugar and high fructose corn syrup. And here is the secret the industry doesn't want you to know. Your muscles cannot use fructose. Not a single cell in your body has a biological requirement for it. So, where does it go? It goes straight to the liver. And your liver, being the primary organ of metabolism, treats fructose much like it treats alcohol. It doesn't see it as fuel, it sees it as a toxin that needs to be neutralized immediately. When you drink a soda or eat processed snacks packed with high fructose corn syrup, your liver is suddenly flooded with a massive, concentrated dose of this substance. It has no choice but to convert that fructose into fat, and it does so at an alarming rate. This isn't just about weight on the scale, it is about the kind of fat. We are talking about visceral fat, the dangerous stuff that wraps around your organs and drives inflammation. By the time your liver is finished converting that fructose into fat, it is so burdened that it stops responding to insulin properly. Your liver begins to pump out its own insulin to compensate, and suddenly you are in a state of chronic hyperinsulinemia. Your body is now locked in a mode of fat storage rather than energy expenditure. You aren't getting fat because you are eating too much. You are getting fat because your body's internal signaling has been hijacked by a substance it was never designed to process in these quantities. We have been sold the idea that sugar is just energy, but that is a half-truth that masks a whole-body crisis. When we treat metabolic disruption as a simple caloric problem, we ignore the fact that the type of molecule matters more than the number on the back of the package. You can consume 100 calories of glucose and your body knows what to do with it. You consume 100 calories of fructose and you have just sent a direct signal to your liver to start building fat. It is time we stop looking at the nutrition label as a simple math equation and start looking at it as a chemistry lecture. If you want to fix your metabolism, you have to stop pouring toxic fuel into an engine that was built to run on something else entirely. So, if we understand that the liver is being overwhelmed by refined fructose, the immediate logical question is, how did we survive for thousands of years eating fruit? Our ancestors didn't have metabolic syndrome, yet they definitely ate sugar in the form of berries, figs, and other seasonal fruits. Why didn't those ancient humans have the same health crisis we see today? The answer lies in the most elegant and necessary defense mechanism that nature ever designed, the fiber matrix. When you eat an apple, you aren't just getting sugar. You are consuming a complex architectural structure. That apple is packed with fiber, insoluble and soluble, that creates a physical barrier around the fructose molecules. Because of this, the sugar doesn't hit your bloodstream all at once. The fiber slows the absorption, it slows the transit time, and it tells your gut to release specific hormones that signal to your brain, I am full, you can stop eating now. Think of the fiber as the chaperone at a party. It keeps the sugar in line, ensures it enters your system at a manageable pace, and prevents the chaos of an insulin spike. But what have we done in our modern industrial age? We have systematically stripped the fiber out of everything. We take the fruit, extract the juice, remove the pulp, and refine it into a clear, concentrated, shelf-stable liquid. We have essentially taken the sugar to the party, but we've left the chaperone at home. Without that protective matrix, the sugar hits your system like a freight train. It bypasses all the natural built-in speed bumps that allow your liver to keep up. When you drink a glass of fruit juice, even if it says all natural on the carton, you are bypassing the very mechanism that keeps you healthy. You are receiving the metabolic impact of a soft drink, despite the healthy image on the label. The fiber is what makes the sugar safe. Without it, the sugar becomes a metabolic liability. This is why the sugar is sugar argument is so profoundly dangerous. It treats the substance as an isolated chemical, ignoring the entire context of the food in which it is found. A whole orange is a completely different entity than a glass of orange juice. One is a metabolic tool that keeps your insulin levels steady and your microbiome thriving. The other is a metabolic weapon that keeps your insulin levels erratic and your liver under constant, unnecessary pressure. We have spent decades obsessing over low-fat labels, replacing fats with these refined, fiber-free sugar mixtures. We thought we were being virtuous, but we were actually stripping our diet of the very thing that protected us. We have effectively turned our food supply into a series of naked carbohydrates. We are constantly exposing our organs to undiluted, rapid-fire sugar hits, and then we wonder why we are exhausted, inflamed, and storing fat we simply cannot seem to burn off. This isn't about avoiding sweetness. It is about restoring the protective integrity of what we put in our mouths. If you want to understand why your body is struggling, look for the fiber. If it has been removed, the food has been stripped of its ability to nourish you safely. We have to stop consuming the symptoms of food, the sweet flavor without the structural benefit, and start demanding the real thing. It's time to stop looking for the sugar-free label and start looking for the fiber-rich label instead. Nature never intended for the sugar to arrive alone. It's about time we stopped inviting it to dinner without its chaperones. Now, let's talk about the missing piece of this puzzle. We've discussed the chemistry, the liver, and the protective role of fiber, but there is a deeper, more insidious trap that the industry relies on, and it's the one that keeps you coming back for more, even when you aren't actually hungry. We have to address the gap between physiological need and emotional convenience. We live in a world that is obsessed with productivity, where our time is taxed, our sleep is compromised, and our stress levels are permanently elevated. And what is the most accessible, socially acceptable, and rapid-acting way to self-soothe in that environment? It's sugar. When you reach for that sugary snack at 3 in the afternoon, or that bowl of ice cream at the end of a grueling day, you aren't just fueling your muscles. You are looking for a neurological reward. You are seeking a hit of dopamine in your brain's reward center. And here is the tragedy. The food industry is fully aware of this. They have mapped the bliss point of their products, that precise concentration of sugar, salt, and fat that lights up your brain in the same way certain addictive substances do. They are not selling you nourishment. They are selling you a temporary chemical anesthesia for the stress of modern living. But there is a catch, and it's a big one. This anesthesia creates a cycle of metabolic starvation. When you use sugar to cope with stress, you are essentially pouring gasoline on a fire. The insulin spike that follows that sugar hit doesn't just store fat. It effectively lowers your blood sugar levels to a point where your brain begins to panic. It thinks it is running out of fuel. So what does it do? It triggers an even more intense craving for more sugar. You are no longer eating because you are hungry. You are eating because your brain is trying to fix the chemical imbalance that the previous dose of sugar created. We have to recognize the difference between the hunger that comes from your stomach, the need for energy, and the hunger that comes from your brain, which is often a cry for relief. When we use food as our primary stress management tool, we lose the ability to regulate our own satiety. We have effectively disconnected our body's internal thermostat. We are starving ourselves at a cellular level while simultaneously over-consuming energy that we can't burn. Think about the way we structure our lives. We work longer hours, we have less time for real, cooked meals, and we rely on processed, quick-fix convenience. This isn't a failure of your spirit. It's an adaptation to a broken environment. But you have to see it for what it is. That chocolate bar isn't love, it isn't comfort, and it isn't a reward for a hard day's work. It is a chemical signal that disrupts your hormones and keeps you trapped in a loop of craving. If you want to break the cycle, you have to find other ways to soothe your nervous system. You need to identify what that sugar is actually replacing. Are you tired? Are you anxious? Are you lonely? If you address the why, the root cause of your emotional distress, you will find that the physical craving for the bliss point diminishes significantly. We have to stop using our bodies as the dumping ground for our stress, and we have to stop treating our metabolic health as something that can be managed with a quick, sugary fix. Real relief doesn't come from a label. It comes from understanding the difference between being hungry for food and being hungry for a life that doesn't need to be numbed. True nourishment begins when we stop using sugar to hide from the very things that make us feel human. Now, let's confront the great escape hatch of the modern age, the zero-sugar solution. You've heard the pitch 1,000 times. You're told that if you just swap the real stuff for artificial sweeteners, the little blue, pink, or yellow packets, you can have your cake and eat it too. You get the sweetness, you get the flavor, and you don't pay the metabolic price. It sounds like the perfect scientific compromise. But I'm here to tell you that this is one of the most clever deceptions ever perpetrated on the public. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human brain and gut communicate. You see, your brain is not stupid. It is hardwired through millions of years of evolution to associate sweet taste with high-energy fuel. When your tongue detects sweetness, it sends an immediate, non-negotiable signal to your brain. Get ready, energy is coming. Your brain then triggers the necessary physiological responses. It preps your gut, it primes your metabolism, and it signals for insulin to be released. But when you consume an artificial sweetener, you're playing a game of bait and switch with your own biology. Your tongue sends the signal that energy is arriving, but the energy never shows up. The gut receives no glucose, the blood sugar doesn't rise, and the brain is left waiting for a delivery that isn't coming. This creates a state of chronic, low-level cognitive dissonance. You have effectively trained your brain to distrust your own senses. And the problem goes deeper than just a confusing signal. We are now learning that these synthetic compounds significantly alter your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria that live in your digestive tract and act as the gatekeepers of your health. Your microbiome thrives on the fiber we talked about earlier, but it is deeply unsettled by these chemical additives. By flooding your system with sweeteners that your body cannot properly break down, you are essentially starving the good bacteria that keep your inflammation in check. You are creating a gut environment that is primed for instability. More importantly, these sweeteners keep you addicted to the intensity of the sensation. If you spend your day drinking diet sodas, your palate is constantly being blasted with a sweetness level that is hundreds, sometimes thousands of times more potent than anything found in nature. When you do that, you recalibrate your baseline. A piece of fresh fruit, which is perfectly sweet in its natural state, starts to taste bland and boring to you. You lose the ability to appreciate the subtle, complex flavors of real, whole foods. You aren't breaking the cycle of dependency. You are simply changing the delivery method. You are maintaining your addiction to the bliss point while keeping your metabolic hormones in a state of perpetual confusion. You haven't escaped the sugar trap. You've just moved to a different cell in the same prison. True metabolic health isn't about finding a clever way to cheat the system without getting caught. It's about recalibrating your taste buds to the reality of natural food. It's about realizing that you don't need that intense artificial surge to feel satisfied. When you step away from the fake stuff, it takes a few weeks, but your palate will adjust. You will find that an apple is suddenly sweeter than it was before, that a strawberry is a delight, and that you no longer need that chemical kick to get through the day. We have to stop looking for the technological hack to bypass our evolutionary biology and start trusting the simple, unadulterated flavors that actually nourish the system. Replacing a bad habit with a fake one is not health. It is just a different way to remain dependent on a lie. So, where does this leave us? If we aren't failing due to a lack of willpower, if we aren't just burning calories in a furnace, if we need our fiber, and if we are being misled by the very solutions that promised to save us, then how do we actually move forward? The final and perhaps most important piece of this puzzle is changing the way we perceive the act of eating itself. We have been taught to view sugar as a moral test, something to be good or bad about. We treat our dietary choices as if we are sinners atoning for our appetites or saints practicing ascetic discipline. But metabolism has absolutely nothing to do with morality, and it has everything to do with biology. When you frame food as a sin, you guarantee that you will eventually fail. Restriction is the enemy of sustainability. The moment you declare that a particular food is forbidden, you create a psychological state of deprivation. You start counting the minutes until you can cheat, and when you do, the guilt that follows only triggers more stress, more cortisol, and inevitably, more craving. It is a closed loop, a self-fulfilling prophecy of shame that the food industry relies on to keep you buying their products. Instead, I want you to shift your perspective entirely. Stop looking at your food as a series of temptations to be resisted or indulgences to be punished. Start looking at your food as information. Every bite you take is a signal you are sending to your cells, your hormones, and your organs. When you choose real, whole foods, foods that have been minimally processed and still possess their structural integrity, you are sending a signal of safety to your body. You are telling your liver that it can handle the load. You are telling your insulin that it can stay in its baseline range. And you are telling your brain that you are sufficiently nourished. This is the transition from fear-based restriction to informed, conscious agency. You don't need to live in a state of constant anxiety about every gram of sugar. You need to understand the principles, protect your liver, feed your gut, and respect your hormones. When you understand the science, when you realize that your body isn't working against you, but is actually fighting to keep you alive despite the environment we've forced it to endure, you stop seeing yourself as the problem. You stop being the victim of your cravings and start being the architect of your own internal environment. This takes time. Your palate will not change overnight, and your metabolic signaling will not reset in a weekend. But you can start by reclaiming your autonomy. The next time you find yourself staring at a label, don't just look for the calorie count. Look for the fiber. Look for the ingredients. Ask yourself, is this food going to send a signal of health to my liver, or is it going to force my body to store fat? You are not a machine that needs to be disciplined. You are a complex biological system that needs to be supported. We have spent decades being told that we are powerless against the food supply, that we are destined to be fat, sick, and tired because of our modern pace of life. That is the ultimate lie. You are not powerless. You have the ability to change the signal you send to your body every single day. You don't need a miracle, a new fad diet, or an artificial substitute. You just need to return to the basics of human biology and treat your body with the respect that the chemistry of life demands. Once you strip away the marketing, the myths, and the moralizing, the solution is simple, tangible, and entirely within your control. Real health is not a destination you reach by restricting your life. It is the natural outcome of a life that finally stops fighting its own biology. Let me ask you a question that might sound strange, but it's the most important thing you'll ever hear about your health. What if everything you've been told about why you're gaining weight, why you're exhausted, and why you can't stop craving sugar is a lie? For decades, we've been fed a script. We've been told that your inability to put down the cookie is a moral failure, a lack of willpower. We've been told that you're simply lazy or that you lack the discipline to count calories and hit the gym. We've been told that the problem is you. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the problem is a massive, systemic, and highly profitable deception? We are living in an era where metabolic disease is the norm, not the exception. We see the numbers on the scale climbing, we feel the afternoon crash, and we see the rise of diabetes and fatty liver disease. And what is our collective response? We blame the individual. We tell people to eat less, move more. But I am here to tell you that this is not a matter of willpower. It is a matter of biochemistry. The biggest lie about sugar isn't just about the sweetness. It is the lie that all calories are equal. It is the lie that sugar is just energy. It is the lie that we can outrun a toxic food environment with sheer grit and determination. The truth is much more sobering. We are being chemically hijacked. The food industry has engineered our food supply to bypass our body's natural safety switches, to overload our livers, and to keep our hormones in a state of perpetual chaos. Today, we are going to dismantle the narrative that has kept you trapped in a cycle of craving and self-blame. We are going to look at the science that the boardroom doesn't want you to know. We are going to stop treating your health as a moral test and start treating it as the biological puzzle it truly is. If you are tired of the guilt, tired of the confusion, and ready to stop fighting a war you never signed up for, you need to hear this. The truth isn't complicated, it's just the opposite of what you've been sold. Let's stop talking about diet and start talking about the reality of your body's chemistry.